always admired the abilities of Glaucon and Adeimantus, I was delighted by what they had to say. Glaucon's admirer was wise, I began in reply, to open his poem on your achievements at the Battle of Megara with the words, "Sons of Ariston, pair divine, sprung from a famous sire." The words are apt. You must indeed have something divine about you, if you can put the case for injustice so strongly, and yet still believe that right is better than wrong. And I am sure that you generally believe it. I can tell that from your character and bearing, though the speeches you have made would have left me in doubt. But the surer I felt, the more doubtful I am what to do. But the surer I feel, the more doubtful I am what to do. I don't see how I'm to help you. I don't think I've got the ability. Witness my failure to convince you just now, when I thought I had demonstrated the superiority of justice in my discussion with Thrasymachus. Yet I don't see how I can refuse, for I am afraid it would be very wrong, while I've life and breath in me, to hear justice slandered as I have done, and then refuse to come to the rescue. So I must do my best not to let her down. Glaucon and the rest of them begged me to proceed and not let the argument drop, but try to find out what justice and injustice are, and what is their real usefulness. So I began saying, quite frankly, this is a very obscure subject we're inquiring into, and I think it needs very keen sight. We aren't very clever, and so I think we had better proceed as follows. Let us suppose we are rather short-sighted men, and are set to read a distant notice written in small letters. We then discover that the same notice is up elsewhere on a larger scale in a larger lettering. Won't it be a godsend to us to be able to read the larger notice first, and then compare it to the smaller to see if they are the same? Certainly, replied Adeimantus, but what bearing has this on our inquiry? I will tell you. Justice can be a characteristic of an individual or a community, can it not? Yes. And a community is larger than an individual? Yes, it is. We may therefore find that the amount of justice in the larger entity is greater, and so easier to recognize. I accordingly propose that we start our inquiry with the community, and then proceed to the individual and see if we can find in the smaller entity anything more corresponding to what we have found in the larger. That seems like a good idea, he agreed. Well then, said I, if we were to look at a community coming into existence, we might be able to see how justice and injustice originate in it, which would, we may hope, make it easier to find what we are looking for. Much easier. Do you think, then, that we should attempt such a survey? For it's not, I assure you, a thing to undertake without thought. My mind is made up, returned Adeimantus. Go on. Society originates, then, said I, so far as I can see, because the individual is not self-sufficient, but has many needs which he can't supply himself. Or can you suggest any other origin for it? No, I can't, he said. And when we have got hold of enough people to satisfy our many varied needs, we have assembled quite a large number of partners and helpers together to live in one place, and we give the resultant settlement the name of community or estate. Yes, I agree. And in the community, all mutual exchanges are made with the benefit of the partners in view. Certainly. Come then, I said. Let us proceed with our imaginary sketch of the origin of the state. It springs, as we have seen, from our needs. Yes, and our first and greatest need is clearly the provision of food to keep us alive. Certainly. Our second need is shelter, and our third, clothing of various kinds. Yes. Well then, will our state supply these needs? It will need a farmer, a builder, and a weaver, and also, I think, a shoemaker, and one or two others to provide for our bodily needs, so that the minimum state would consist of 4 or 5 men. Evidently. Then should each of these men contribute the product of his labour to a common stock? For instance, should the farmer provide enough food for all 4 of them, and devote enough time and labour to food production to provide for all common needs? Or alternatively, should he disregard the others and devote a quarter of his time to producing a quarter of the amount of food, and the other three quarters one to building himself a house, one to making clothes, and another to making shoes? Should he, in other words, avoid the trouble of sharing with others and devote himself to providing for his own needs only? To which Adeimantus replied, "The first alternative is perhaps the simpler." "Not need that surprises," I rejoined, for as you were speaking, it occurred to me that, in the first place, no two of us are born exactly alike. We have different aptitudes which fit us for different jobs. We have indeed. So do we do better to stick to one trade or to try to practice several? To stick to one, he said. And there is a further point. It is fatal in any job to miss the right moment for action. The workman must be at the core of his job. His job will not wait till he has leisure to spare for it. Quantity and quality are therefore more easily produced when a man specializes appropriately on a single job for which he is naturally fitted. That's certainly true. We shall need more than 4 citizens then, Adeimantus, to supply the needs we mentioned, for the farmer, it seems, will not make his own plough or hoe or any of his other agricultural implements if they are to be well made. The same is true of the builder and the many tools he needs, and of the weaver and shoemaker. And so smiths and other craftsmen must share the work and swell the numbers of our small community. They must, and it will still not be unduly large if we add cowherds and shepherds and stockmen of various kinds to provide oxen for the plough and draught animals for builder and farmer, as well as hides and wool for shoemaker and weaver. No, he answered, but it will no longer be so very small. And yet it is almost impossible to found a state in a place where it will not need imports. Quite impossible. So we shall need another class in our community to fetch for it what it needs from abroad. Yes, and if our agent goes empty-handed and takes with him nothing of which those from whom he is to get what we want are in need, he will return empty-handed. So we must produce at home not only enough for our own needs, but also enough goods of the right kind for the foreigners to supply us, which means an increase in the number of farmers and other workers in our state. The increase will be necessary, and it will of course include agents to handle the export and import of goods, whom we call merchants. We shall need them too. Yes, we shall. And if our trade is to be overseas, we shall need a whole lot of experts on ships and seafaring. Yes, a whole lot of them. Then within our state, hired citizens to exchange the products of their labour, for such a mutual exchange was the reason for its foundation. They will buy and sell, and that will require a market and a currency as the medium of exchange. Certainly. And if a farmer or any other producer brings his goods to market at a time when no one wants to exchange with him, is there, will he sit about in the market and neglect his own job? Certainly not, he replied. There's a class who see here a chance of doing a service. It consists, in a well-run community, of those who are at least fit physically and unsuitable for other work, for their job ties them to the marketplace, while they buy goods from those who want to sell, and sell goods to those who want to buy. And so this requirement produces a class of retailers in our state, for that is what we call those whose business is to trade with the public at home, as opposed to merchants who travel abroad. Agreed. There's another class whose services we need, those who have no great power of mind to contribute, but whose physical strength makes them suitable for manual labour. They market their strength and call the return they get for their wages. They market their strength and call the return they get for it their wages, and in consequence are usually called wage earners, and with them our population is complete. Yes, I think it is. Then can we say that our state is now full grown? Perhaps we can. If so, where are we to find justice and injustice in it? With which of the elements you have examined does it originate? I don't know, Socrates, he replied, unless it be in some relationship between them. You may be right, said I. We must press on with our inquiry, so let us first consider how so equipped will live. They will produce corn, wine, clothes and shoes, and will build themselves houses. In the summer they will for the most part work unclothed and unshod. In the winter they will be clothed and shod suitably. For food, they will prepare wheat meal or barley meal for making or kneading. They will serve splendid cakes and loaves on rushes of fresh leaves, and will sit down to feast with their children on couches of myrtle and prune. And afterwards they will drink wine and pray to the gods with garlands on their heads, and enjoy each other's company. And fear of poverty and war will make them keep the numbers of their families within their means. I say, interrupted Glaucon, that's pretty plain fare for a feast, isn't it? You're quite right, said I. I had forgotten. They will have a few luxuries. Salt, of course, and olive oil and cheese, and different kind of vegetables from which to make various country dishes. And we must give them some dessert, figs and peas and beans, and myrtle berries and acorns to roast at the fire as they sip their wine. So they will lead a peaceful and healthy life, and expect to die at a ripe old age, leaving their children to do the same in turn. Part 2. Civilized Society. Really, Socrates, Glaucon commented, you might be catering for a community of pigs. And how would you do it, Glaucon? I asked. Give them the ordinary efforts, he replied. Let them sit on chairs and eat off tables and have normal, civilized food. All right, I said. I understand. We are to study not only the origins of society, but also society when it enjoys the luxuries of civilization. Not a bad idea, perhaps, for in the process we may discover how justice and injustice are bred in a community. For there the society we have described seems to me to be the true norm, just as a man in health is the norm. There's nothing to prevent us, if you wish, studying one whose temperature luxury is raised. Such a society will not be satisfied with the standard of living we have described. It will want chairs and tables and other furniture, and a variety of delicacies, scents, cosmetics, sweets, and mistresses. And we must no longer confine ourselves to the bare necessities of our earlier description, houses, clothing, and shoes, but we must add the fine arts of painting and embroidery, and introduce materials like gold and ivory. Do you agree? Yes, he said. We shall have to enlarge our state again. Our healthy state is no longer big enough. Its size must be enlarged to make room for a multitude of occupations, none of which is concerned with necessaries. There will be hunters and fishermen, and there will be artists, sculptors, painters and musicians. There will be poets and playwrights with their following of reciters, actors, chorus trainers and producers. There will be manufacturers of domestic furniture of all sorts, and fashion experts for the women. And we shall need a lot more servants, tutors, nurses, ladies' maids, barbers, confectioners, and cooks. And we shall need swineherds too. There were none in our former state, as we had no need of them, but now we need pigs, and cattle in quantities too, if we are to eat meat. Agreed? There's no denying it. We shall need doctors too, far more than we did before. With our new luxuries we certainly shall, and the territory which was formerly enough to support us will now be too small. If we are to have enough pasture and plough, we shall have to cut a slice off of our neighbours' territory. And if they too are no longer confining themselves to necessities and have embarked on the pursuit of unlimited material possessions, they will want a slice of ours too. The consequence is inevitable, and that will lead to war, Glaucon, will it not? It will. For the moment, I said, we are not concerned with the effects of war, good or bad. Let us merely note that we have found its origin to be the same as that of most evil, individual or social. Yes, I agree. But it means a considerable addition to our state, the addition of an army which will go out and fight for its interests and defend its citizens against all comers. But can't the citizens fight for themselves? Not if the principle on which we all, yourself included, agreed when we started constructing our state is sound. And that was, if you remember, that one man could do more than one job or profession well. Yes, that is true. Well, soldiering is a profession, is it not? Very much so. And is it of any less consequence to us than shoemaking? Certainly not. Well, we forbade our shoemaker to try his hand at farming or weaving or building, and told him to stick to his last, in order that our shoemaking should be well done. Similarly, with other trades, we assigned each man to one for which he was naturally suited, and which he was to practice throughout his life to the exclusion of all others, and so become good at his job, and never miss the right moment for action. Now it is surely of the greatest importance that the business of war should be efficiently run, for soldiering is not so easy a job that a man can be a soldier at the same time as he is a farmer, or shoemaker, or follows some other trade. Why, you can't even become a competent draughts or dice player if you don't practice seriously from childhood, but only do it in your spare time. Does a man become competent as infantryman or in any other branch of military service the moment he picks up a shield or any of the other tools of the soldier's trade? Merely to pick up the tools of any other trade does not turn a man into a craftsman or games player. The tool is useful only to the man who knows how to use it and has had enough practice in the use of it. True, otherwise tools would indeed be precious. And so the business of defence, just because it is the most important of all, requires a correspondingly complete freedom from other affairs and a correspondingly high degree of skill and practice. I suppose it does, he said. It will need also natural aptitude. Of course. And so it would seem to be our business, if we can, to choose men with suitable aptitudes for the defence of our state. And let me say that it's no mean task to undertake. Still, we must not shrink from it, but do it to the best of our ability. We must. Part 3. Qualities required in the guardians. There is, said I, a certain similarity between the qualities needed in a good watchdog and those needed in our guardians. I mean that each must have keen perception and speed in pursuit, and also strength to fight if he catches his quarry. Yes, it will need all these qualities, and also courage if he is to fight well. Of course, and no horse or dog or any other creature will have courage unless it has mettle and spirit, for have you not noticed what an irrepressible and unbeatable thing high spirits are, making their possessor quite fearless and indomitable in the face of danger? I have indeed. We know, therefore, what the physical qualities of our guardians must be, and that they must have high spirits as a quality of character. Yes. But if they have these qualities, Glaucon, I said, won't they be aggressive in their behaviour to each other and to the rest of the community? It won't be easy to prevent it. And yet they ought to be gentle towards their fellow citizens and dangerous only to their enemies. Otherwise they will destroy each other before others can destroy them. True. What are we to do then? I said. Where are we to find the gentle and generous disposition which will counteract their high spirits? If we deprive them of either quality, they won't make good guardians. Yet we seem to be asking the impossible, and if so, a good guardian is an impossibility. I am afraid it is. I felt myself in a difficulty, but I thought over what we had just been saying and then exclaimed, "You know, we really deserve to be in a difficulty, for we have failed to press on our analogy far enough." In what way? We have not noticed that there are natures which combine the qualities we thought incompatible. And where are they to be found? In different kinds of animal, but particularly in the watchdog which we have used as our analogy. For have you not observed that it is a characteristic of a well-bred dog to behave with the utmost gentleness to those it is used to and knows, but to be savage to strangers? Yes, I have noticed that. The kind Would you agree then that our prospective guardian needs, in addition to his high spirits, something of a disposition of a philosopher? I don't understand what you mean, he said. It is a remarkable characteristic which you will find in the dog. It is annoyed when it sees a stranger, even though he has done it no harm, but it welcomes anyone it knows, and even though it has never had any kindness from him. Haven't you ever thought how remarkable this is? I can't say I've ever thought about it before, he replied, but of course it's quite true. And yet it is a trait that shows real discrimination and a truly philosophic nature, I said, for the dog distinguishes the sight of friend and foe simply by knowing one and not knowing the other, and a creature that distinguishes between the familiar and the unfamiliar on grounds of knowledge or ignorance must be gifted with a real love of knowledge. There is no denying it, he said. But is not philosophy the same thing as the love of knowledge? It is. And so, for